Okay, so you want to own a self-storage facility. And on the surface, this looks like the simplest building in commercial real estate. There is no plumbing in the units, no kitchens, no elevators in half of them. Nobody lives there. Nothing breaks. The tenant brings their own stuff, puts their own lock on the door, and you never see them again. It is a metal box that collects rent. The industry is enormous. More than 50,000 facilities across the United States, over 2.1 billion rentable square feet, and somewhere around $45 billion in annual revenue, depending on whose count you use. Two things to hold on to before we go anywhere. The first is that, for the exact same unit, at the exact same facility, on the exact same day, there are two completely different prices. One of them is public. You have seen it on a website. The other one you do not find out about until much later, and it is the reason this entire industry exists. The second is stranger. There is a product sold at the counter when you sign up, almost as an afterthought. That is one of the most profitable things in the entire building. It is not a unit. It is not a lock. And for one of the largest operators in America, it generated nearly $200 million of operating income in a single year. We will get to both. But we start with the building, because the building is genuinely as good as it looks. Here is the thesis, and everything else is proof. Self-storage is priced like real estate and operated like a subscription business. And the product that subscription actually sells is not space. It is how inconvenient it is to cancel. Let's start with why this asset class is so beloved by people who own real estate for a living. Every other kind of commercial property has a problem called tenant improvements. An office tenant needs the floor built out. A retail tenant needs the space fitted. When they leave, you spend money again for the next one. You pay a broker a commission to find them. You negotiate a long lease with lawyers involved. Self-storage has none of that. The unit is finished the day it is built, and it is finished forever. There is no build-out, no broker, no lease negotiation. A customer signs a month-to-month agreement online and gets a gate code. So look at what that does to the cost structure. Published benchmarks put self-storage operating expenses at roughly 30 to 45% of effective gross income, against 45 to 55% for apartments. That gap is the whole reason institutional money moved into this sector. And at the top end, it is not even close. In its 2025 annual report, Public Storage reported a same-store direct operating margin of 78%, 78 cents of every same-store dollar surviving direct operating costs. The labor line explains a lot of it. Public Storage reports that self-selected digital options now account for 85% of customer interactions, up from 30% in 2019, and that its digital initiatives have reduced labor hours by more than 30%. A facility that once needed a manager at a desk all day can now run on a part-time person and an app, which produces the number that really matters, and it is the one that makes this business recession-resistant. Break-even occupancy. Because the fixed costs are so low, a self-storage facility can cover its operating costs at somewhere around 30 to 45% physical occupancy. Public Storage Management has cited roughly 30%. Compare that to an apartment building, which typically needs something closer to 60, Sit with that. More than half the units in the building can be sitting empty, and the building is still fine. And it showed up exactly when you would expect it to. According to NAREIT data, REITs across all sectors finished 2008 with average total returns of negative 37.3%. Self-storage REITs finished that year at positive 5.1%. Best performing sector of any kind. Public storage grew same-store revenue and operating income by about 3% that year and raised its dividend 18% in early 2010. While the rest of commercial real estate was on fire, the storage business was collecting rent from people who were downsizing because of the fire. So the obvious question is, if this is so good, why isn't everyone building one? Increasingly, they are not allowed to. There is a genuine national backlash against new self-storage development, and it comes from an unusual place. Cities do not want these buildings. They occupy commercially zoned land, generate almost no jobs, and produce very little sales tax. Atlanta, which led the nation in storage construction in 2025, moved to impose a moratorium. New York City requires a special permit in industrial business zones. Cape Coral, Toledo, Providence, Rock Hill, Arvada, Elk Grove, and others have enacted or considered restrictions. One Oregon city concluded it already had more than twice the storage space its population needed. Which is quietly excellent news if you already own one, and a real barrier if you do not. Now you could stop the video here, and you would already understand why institutional investors love this asset. Everything so far is just a very good building with very low costs. But none of it explains where the money actually comes from, because a low-cost building with a full-price tenant is just a good landlord business. This is something else, and the difference is the two prices I mentioned at the start. Let's go find them. Go online right now and search for a storage unit near you. You will see a rate, 10 by 10, climate controlled, some number around $130 a month. Very often, you will see a promotion attached. First month free, $1 for the first month, 50% off for 3 months. That is the street rate, and it is not really a price. It is a bid to win a customer. Move-in discounting in this industry reached roughly 40% off at its peak in late 2024. Operators run dynamic pricing that adjusts constantly by unit type and location, and during soft demand, the advertised number goes very low. Now here is the number I promised you. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Public Storage reported that customers moving in were paying an annualized contract rent of $11.60 per square foot. Customers moving out that same quarter were paying $20.12. Same buildings, same units, same quarter. The people leaving were paying 73% more than the people arriving. Read that from the other direction, because this is the mechanism. Every time a long-tenured customer leaves and a new one takes that unit, the rent on that unit falls by roughly 42%, which means the business does not make money by filling units. It makes money by what happens to a customer between the day they move in and the day they leave. That process has a name in the industry. It is called an existing customer rate increase, usually shortened to ECEII. Here is how it works. You move in at the discounted rate. A few months later, you get a notice that your rent is going up. Then a few months after that, another one. Estimates put annual increases on existing tenants somewhere in the range of 8 to 15% or more, and one institutional analysis characterizes them as running in excess of 10% per year. And the reason operators can do this is the single most important fact in the business: almost nobody leaves. An industry rule of thumb holds that fewer than 5% of customers vacate within 30 days of a rate increase, and the average length of stay has been climbing steadily. Current estimates put it around 18.5 to 20 months. Extra Space reports that 64% of its tenants stay longer than 12 months on a lease that can be canceled with 30 days notice. So ask yourself why. Because leaving is not a decision. It is a project. You need a truck or a friend with a truck. You need a free Saturday. You need somewhere else to put everything. You need to lift the same boxes you lifted the last time. And the reward for all of that effort is saving maybe $30 a month. The rational move is almost always to pay the $30 and get on with your life. And every operator in America has priced accordingly. The increases are sized to sit just below the threshold where lifting the boxes becomes worth it. If you know somebody who has had a storage unit for more than a year, this is the part to send them. Not because anything improper is happening, because most people have no idea their rate is not the rate, that the person who moved in last month is very likely paying less than they are, and that in most cases you can simply call and ask. Now, I want to be careful here, because there is an easy version of this story where the industry is preying on people, and that is not what the evidence supports. Storage solves real problems. Roughly half of rentals are driven by what the industry calls the 4 Ds: death, divorce, downsizing, and dislocation. Somebody's parent passed away, and the house has to be cleared. A marriage ended, and 2 households have to become 2 households. A family is between homes. These are not frivolous purchases. The Self-Storage Association's 2025 demand study found that 12.6% of American households were renting storage in 2024, up from 11.1% 2 years earlier. 16.7 million households, the largest 2-year jump on record. But it is also true that dynamic pricing and rate increases are deliberate revenue management tools, and that plenty of customers end up paying more in cumulative rent than the contents of their unit are worth. Both things are true at the same time, and any honest description of this business has to hold both. Now, the second thing I promised you: the product at the counter. When you sign up for a unit, you will be told you need coverage for the contents. Your own home insurance might cover it, or it might not, and the facility will offer you a protection plan for something like $15 or $20 a month. That is not a rounding error. It is one of the most profitable products in the building. In 2025, Public Storage's tenant reinsurance segment produced $250.7 million in premium revenue and $192.4 million in net operating income. Work out that margin. Roughly 77 cents of operating income on every premium dollar. And it has grown about 82% since 2019. Now put it in proportion. because the proportion is the interesting part. 250 million in premium is only about 5% of that company's total revenue, against more than 3 billion in rental operating income. So it is not the main business. But per dollar of revenue, it is dramatically more profitable than renting out space. And for a smaller independent operator, third-party insurance programs commonly carry margins in the 30 to 60% range. So the picture is complete. A unit rented at a discount. A rate raised repeatedly on a customer who will not leave, and a high-margin product attached at the counter that most people accept without thinking about it, because they are standing there holding a box. Which brings us to the thing that genuinely surprised me in the data. Self-storage demand is supposed to track the housing market. People move, people store, and the housing market has been frozen. Existing home sales in 2025 totaled 4.06 million, the lowest annual figure since 1995. Down about a third from the 2021 peak. That should have been devastating. Fewer moves means fewer move-ins. Instead, household penetration went up and length of stay went up. Fewer new customers arrived, but the ones already inside stayed longer and paid more. Which is exactly what you would expect from a subscription business, and exactly not what you would expect from a landlord. When move-ins slow down, a normal property has empty space. This industry has a book of existing customers it can reprice. So let's put a year on it, both ways. In the good scenario, you own a stabilized facility in a market where the city is not approving new supply. Physical occupancy sits in the low 90s, your rate increase cadence is disciplined, and your insurance attach rate is high. Your expense ratio is under 40%, and your operating margin is comfortably above 60, because your break-even occupancy is somewhere around a third. A bad year is a slower year rather than a crisis. That facility is a genuinely excellent asset, and it is why the sector was the best performing property type in the major institutional index from its debut in 2005 through 2022. In the realistic scenario, you built one. New facilities take roughly 24 to 36 months to reach 90% physical occupancy, and Public Storage's own filings say full revenue stabilization takes 3 to 5 years. During lease-up, you are discounting hardest, so you are filling the building with customers at your lowest rates while servicing the debt on your highest costs. Meanwhile, the market got softer. Move-in rents at the largest operator were down 6.5% in 2025, following a nearly 12% decline the year before. Cushman & Wakefield reported average per square foot values falling roughly 12% from their 2023 peak. Nothing burned down. Your gates work. Your units are clean. Your occupancy is respectable. You just found out that owning the building was the easy part, and the actual business is a pricing operation that takes years to mature, because the value of this asset is not in the units you filled this month. It is in the customers who were already inside, quietly absorbing their fourth increase, and in every month that passes without them borrowing a truck. That is the whole thing in one line. Almost every landlord makes money by finding a tenant and keeping the rent coming. Here the tenant is easy to find and easy to lose, and the entire business is built on the fact that leaving requires lifting the same boxes twice, which means the honest question was never whether people need storage. 16.5 million households say they do. The question is what the number on your agreement looks like 18 months from now, and whether you will ever get around to finding out. This video is general education about how an industry works, not business, financial, real estate, legal, or investment advice. If you want the real figures, publicly traded storage operators publish detailed occupancy, move-in and move-out rent, and segment income data in their annual and quarterly filings, all free to read. Lien, auction, and rate notice rules vary by state, and several states restrict pricing during declared emergencies.